Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. The president and vice president met with multiple state governors today as they continue their push for the country's reopening. But President Trump is also threatening to withhold funding from two states run by Democratic governors. Natalie Brand is at the White House with more.
It's been an honor to work with both of you. Thank you very much.
During a White House meeting with the governors of Arkansas and Kansas, President Trump said he'll stop taking the controversial drug hydroxychloroquine to prevent COVID-19 soon.
I think the regimen finishes in a day or two. Yeah, I think it's 2 days.
The president and his task force also touted U.S. testing numbers as all states take steps towards reopening this week.
Our testing is so far advanced that we're close to 14 million in testing.
We have a ways to go, but we can see light at the end of the tunnel.
Vice President Mike Pence traveled to Florida, where he delivered personal protective equipment to a nursing home and met with the state's Governor Ron DeSantis. The meetings with governors come as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has now published 60 pages of detailed guidance for reopening. That's something that lawmakers and local leaders had called for after reports the initial document was shelved by the White House. Those guidelines specifically target schools, restaurants and bars, child care programs, workplaces, youth programs and camps, and mass transit.
The 60-page document was merely an aggregation of a lot of what was already out there, so it's not as if this was new information that we were announcing.
Meanwhile, President Trump tweeted threats to cut federal funding to Michigan and Nevada because those states are ramping up absentee ballot applications due to the pandemic.
I don't think it's going to be necessary because mail-in ballots are a very dangerous thing. They're subject to massive fraud.
We got to take politics out of this crisis moment.
Nevada's governor called the threat inappropriate and outrageous. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, the White House.
Studies have found that absentee voting rarely leads to voter fraud. Research also shows that voting by mail does not help any one party in particular. Well, Governor Steve Bullock announced yesterday that Montana would be entering phase 2 of his reopening plan on June 1st. However, not all were happy as dozens of people were on hand at the state capitol today to protest Montana's continued restrictions. This group expressed their discontentment with continued restrictions on business and gatherings, calling for the state to be fully reopened. Those who attended the rally said they see the state's rules as arbitrary, favoring some groups over others, and that there were unreasonable restrictions on people's freedom. Well, many acknowledge the concerns around the coronavirus, but say that a full shutdown wasn't justified.
On the principle of it, as a free society, we can't just force people to close down because things are scary. If we are not free when things are bad, then are we really free, or are we just play acting at being free?
And while COVID-19 has taken a tremendous economic toll on Montana, this disease itself has not hit the state as hard at this point as had been feared or predicted. This afternoon, I had the chance to talk to Montana's top doctor about that and also about those who say we still aren't moving to reopen quickly enough.
Things are working really well here in this state, and we don't want to let down our guard. I think we can loosen things up and start to move to the next level, but we need to continue to do the things to protect our neighbors, protect ourselves, and protect our communities.
There's a lot of people who still, regardless, want to open things up right away. I think there's a protest going on today, as a matter of fact, there in Helena. A lot of people saying it infringes on their rights to have these restrictions. What would be your response to them?
Well, I very much believe in individual rights, but we also live in a community, and you do have you have responsibilities to your other community members and places of where you're going to interact and be there. So I think you need to show respect for those individuals and do things to help keep them safe. You have a right if you were the only one that was going to get sick making that decision, but you're not. You could be the person that spreads it to many other people who don't have a choice.
I also talked to Yellowstone County Health Officer John Felton today about the move to phase 2 and a lot of other topics as well, and we'll hear more from him tomorrow evening. Well, fire tears through a cafe in Roundup, destroying it and injuring a firefighter in the process. That fire broke out around 9:30 this morning at the Vintage Cafe. No cause has been determined, but the fire marshal was on the scene to investigate until late this afternoon. One firefighter was taken to a local hospital for smoke inhalation and is expected to make a full recovery. That's according to Roundup's fire chief. Roundup volunteer firefighters were forced to knock down the building with an excavator to ensure that fire didn't spread to neighboring structures.
We had smoke coming through the middle of the buildings, two of them, front and rear. We had smoke and then fire eventually. 5 hours into it, we had to have an excavator come and knock the building down, and then we can knock it down the rest of it.
Firefighters from Muscle County, DNRC, and other local teams helped put out that fire. Well, catastrophic flooding from two failed dams could put the town of Midland, Michigan under 9 feet of water. Michigan's governors declared a state of emergency, and some 10,000 people in the central part of the state have been told to evacuate. Michael George has the latest.
Catastrophic flooding in Midland County, Michigan submerged roads, vehicles, and buildings following a dam failure and breach Tuesday.
This is the craziest we've ever seen.
I've been here approximately 26 years and have never had this type of situation occur.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer flew over impacted areas Wednesday, warning residents rising waters could reach 9 feet.
If you are in an impacted area and have not done so yet, please get somewhere safe.
The collapse of the Edenville and Sanford dams already forced the evacuation of thousands of residents downstream. More than 100 people, many elderly, spent the night at this emergency shelter at Midland High School, sleeping on cots.
Everybody was literally leaving.
Everyone was packing their
up.
stuff, rushing, and they were rushing because they were saying it's coming right now, and they were running out of time.
The historic dam failures came as record-breaking rainfall of more than 7 inches drenched parts of the Midwest this week.
This, with the dam failures, will equate to the equivalent of a 500-year flood, something we've never experienced before.
Michigan has also been dealing with the coronavirus pandemic and is preparing to reopen certain businesses Friday.
We've got to continue to all work together to observe best practices, do our part to help one another, and to wear our masks and continue to try to social distance.
In 2018, the Edenville Dam was given an unsatisfactory condition rating by the state. Governor Whitmer says her administration is examining what caused both dams to fail and will pursue legal action if necessary. Michael George, CBS News.
President Trump is scheduled to visit Michigan tomorrow. All right, turning to Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire. And Bob, our neighbors to the northeast saw some wild weather this evening.
Oh, yeah. We knew it was going to be pretty bad today. Let me show you the reason why. We go with our thunderstorm outlook, and this is what we had. All of eastern Montana and all the way up towards the north, we were expecting an elevated risk of severe thunderstorms today, and boy, did we. Take a look at these guys as they made their way from Miles City on up towards Glasgow. And as you can see in a couple places, we have some red triangles. Those are tornado vortex signatures. The Glasgow National Weather Service on their Facebook page did confirm that they did have some tornadoes just east of that city, and that's what you're seeing as those storms moved up in that area. Now tonight we still have this. There is basically a severe thunderstorm watch until 11 o'clock tonight for the area highlighted in yellow. In orange it's until 10:30, 70-mile-per-hour winds. That's a severe thunderstorm warning up there by Glasgow and along the High Line. It's just a mess up there. They've had a lot of heavy thunderstorms, a lot of hail, and also the high winds just tearing everything apart. We'll have more on our Billings forecast coming up in a few more minutes.
Thank you, Bob. Just 2 days after reopening, a woman was injured this afternoon after approaching a bison in Yellowstone National Park. That woman was knocked to the ground in the Old Faithful Upper Geyser Basin after getting within 25 yards of that bison, which park officials warn is too close. Emergency medical responders from the park responded immediately, but the woman refused transportation to the hospital. Now, this is the first bison-related incident in 2020. Wyoming state government is ready to help businesses reopen. Some of that involves monitoring COVID-19 in the counties around Yellowstone National Park and Grand Teton National Park. The Wyoming Department of Health has been working with the National Park Service and other federal agencies preparing for tourists. According to the state health officer, Wyoming has supplies to do testing of symptomatic persons and surveillance to ensure detecting early cases. Governor Mark Gordon says monitoring COVID-19 will happen in Park, Teton, and Fremont counties.
The steps we're taking to make sure that as visitors come to Park, Teton, and Fremont County on their way to Yellowstone Park, that we have adequately helped to buttress those counties as well. Personal protection equipment and expanding our testing and contact tracing capabilities. Particularly interested in making sure that our counties were ready to go. They're sort of under the gun right now with everybody coming their direction.
Wyoming State Health Officer Dr. Alexia Harris asked that people follow basic advice such as staying home when they're sick. Still ahead on tonight's Q2 10 o'clock news, another growing season is underway in Montana. We're going to look at the annual crop survey next. Plus, with campaign 2020 heating up, we're going to take a closer look at the Republican primaries for Montana State Legislature. And in sports, game, set, match. Scott looks back at one of the best tennis players the state has seen.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.